Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another live stream. Thank you so much for everyone who's been waiting for me. And thank you for everyone joining us for this live stream, whether you're regular or new. Thank you so much for joining me. So just to clarify for everyone new joining us, obviously these live streams are for the viewers, members, and subscribers to participate, share their views, thoughts, about everything we speak about. Before I get into tonight's topic, and obviously open the question up for all of you after this. Greetings, obviously, everyone. I hope you're all well. I'm good too, thank you. I released a couple of videos tonight, and there's going to be another video released later on tonight about a couple of things, a couple of very important developments. Number one, the Hezbollah offensive, very big attack on Israel. Not unprecedented, like we've seen some of these things before. They're clearly changing tactic a little bit. Mind you, some media is selling it out as if it's not selling it, portraying it as if it's the initial response from Iran. And I don't think that's the case, because there's nothing significant about it. If it is the initial response of Iran, then it's quite underwhelming. I don't think it is. Iran didn't say it is. Neither did Hezbollah. Hezbollah, and firstly, we had the report that it was 50 missiles. Then we had another report later on saying it was 100, even though it's not verified that it was 100. All of the evidence we've seen that there was around 50 missiles in 1 minute. Still a significant number on Israeli bases, and obviously some UAVs on Israel. The second video, I spoke about the Haredi community and their protests against conscription, this time in front of an army recruitment center, right? And some of them were attacked by the police, and they're saying this is like a Jewish war against a genocide attempt. You know, the terminology was interesting. And then the video that you're going to have later on will be about leaks from the negotiating delegation that was leaked to the media. And Netanyahu is not happy about that. And you will see the response, might be during this live stream or just before or after we finish at around 11. Tonight, however, what I wanted to talk to you about before I open the space up for you, and obviously feel free from now if any of you have any questions or that I'd be more than happy to address afterwards, is Iran and the US. So Axios, they had a report saying Iran warns the US to stay out of fight with Israel or face attack on troops. So just to give you a bit of a background, when it comes to Iran so far, they obviously said they're going to retaliate. We will retaliate through the resistance, the brave resistance, the men of the resistance. They promised that they will retaliate. We also had the US saying, you know, the defense minister was with Yoav Gallant, the American Secretary of Defense, with Yoav Gallant saying we're going to support Israel, we're going to support this and that. However, there's, you know, and the US knows how vulnerable it is in case Iran attacks and there's an all-out war. They have bases all across the Middle East. They know how vulnerable they are, really. Not sure why they still have troops there, and they don't have relevant defense. And it was evident from the strikes that were carried out by Iran after Qasem Soleimani's assassination. Heavy missiles. And they landed, all of them, right? But now, according to Axios, Iran sent a message to the US, not directly, but through an Arab country or countries. Okay, so in their report, they said that Iran sent a message to the Biden administration through several Arab countries earlier this week. If the US gets involved in the fighting between Israel and Iran, US forces in the region will be attacked. 3 US officials told Axios. They continued why it matters. The US and Israel are preparing for Iran to retaliate against Israel for an airstrike that killed a top Iranian general in Damascus last week. And let's hold on for 1 second before we continue, right? Because it's important not just to consume information, right? No, don't just read information, but analyze it, read between the lines, and raise some questions. Why is the US standing with Israel after Israel carried out an illegal attack on a country's embassy/consulate? Why would they stand with the aggressive country? Interesting question, just to kind of point out. Obviously, this might be obvious to all of you, but you need to understand that, obviously you didn't have condemnation internationally. It's fascinating. Imagine a European embassy was bombed by a country somewhere. Would it be the same silence? Or would you be preparing the NATO? You'd be preparing the NATO. A country was attacked. A European country was attacked. We need to go and attack this aggressive country. They pose a threat to the world. They're a terrorist regime. This is what they would be doing. But because it's Iran and countries that they don't like, they'll shut up. They'll keep their mouths shut. Anyway, they continued. The Iranian supreme leader has threatened punishment for Israel, but through private channels, Iran has signaled it would be limited. Israel, firstly, but before we continue as well, Iran didn't keep it private that it will be limited. They said initially that it won't be in a manner to deviate from the genocide in Gaza. And that most likely means that it's not Iran directly that's going to retaliate. Israel and the US think an Iranian attack would include the launch of ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and attack drones from Iran to Israeli territory. Again, Iran doesn't have to do it on its own. From Iran. They can do it from Yemen, they can do it from Iraq, they can do it from Lebanon, and from other undisclosed locations. US officials say the Biden administration asked Israel to notify the US and for the US to have a say before decisions are made about any retaliation by Israel. And notice the terminology again, retaliation by Israel. Israel is the aggressor. What is it going to retaliate for? They started this. They're the country committing genocide, killing innocent people. Over 33,000 now. That's official stats. You have thousands missing. And Israel doesn't allow the civil services to go and take their bodies even. The latest from Axios was a US defense official told Axios US is moving additional assets to the region to bolster regional deterrence efforts and increase force protection for US forces. What are they sending in terms of assets? The biggest asset that they had, the aircraft carrier with obviously accompanied by many other ships, warships. And they took it away 2 months in to put pressure on Israel to submit to the US will. But they obviously didn't say that. They don't want to show how the relationship between them and their little puppet genocidal satanic death cult state works. Behind the scenes, Axios continued, 3 US officials said in recent days that Iranians told several Arab governments that they see the US as responsible for the Israeli attack that killed the Iranian general in Damascus, regardless of US efforts to distance itself from the strike. Well, it's because Iran knows how the game works. You're the one supporting them and enabling them. They continued, the US maintains it had no involvement in the strike, a senior US official said. The Iranian message was that if the US gets involved after an Iranian attack on Israel, US bases in the region will be attacked. Now note, by the way, when the Iraqi resistance paused their attacks on US bases temporarily, then they reactivated them. They only had strikes against Israeli targets. They stopped attacking US bases. So now that could be again from the Iraqi resistance because they've been inactive for some time now when it comes to attacking US bases. Although they're talking about expelling all remaining US forces in Iraq. The Iranian message was, we will attack the forces that attack us, so don't F with us and we won't F with you. That's the US official saying that. I'm not sure the Iranians would say that really, but don't F with us, we won't F with you, right? According to them, between the lines, President Biden and other US officials have said publicly the US would help Israel defend itself against Iranian attacks. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin told Israeli Minister of Defense Yoav Gallant in a call on Thursday that Israel could count on full US support to defend Israel against Iranian attacks, which Tehran has publicly threatened, the Pentagon said. Gallant told Austin a direct Iranian attack will require an appropriate Israeli response against Iran. These people are so arrogant, aren't they? They can defeat Hamas and they think they can go and threaten Iran. A US official told Axios it wasn't clear from the message received via several Arab countries whether the Iranians were threatening to attack US forces if they help Israel intercept Iranian missiles, or only if they participate in an Israeli retaliation. The general assessment of the US intelligence community is that the Iranians could attack US forces only if the US joins Israel in a counteroffensive, according to the US official. According to Axios' analysis, Iran is sending a different message through other communication channels, including calls between the foreign ministers of the UK, Australia, and Germany, and their Iranian counterpart on Thursday. Two US officials said the Iranian message in these calls was more nuanced and signaled the Iranians are aimed at a limited response that will not lead to a regional escalation. Another US official said the US is communicating directly with Iran through the formal Swiss channel of communication, and Iran did not communicate threats through this channel. But they've been just talking about the Arab states, supposedly. US officials have been in touch with regional partners to discuss efforts to message to Iran to not escalate the situation, a US official said. They've also been in touch with Israel to ensure they are able to defend themselves and at the same time prevent tensions from escalating. What to watch, again, according to the analysis of Axios, US CENTCOM Command General Michael Eric Kurilla is in Israel to coordinate the US-Israeli defensive effort ahead of any possible Iranian strike, US and Israeli officials said. The official stressed that Biden administration asked Israel in recent days to notify and consult the US in advance of any Israeli retaliation against Iran. The Biden administration felt Israel didn't consult and didn't give it an appropriate notice before its strike in Damascus that killed the Iranian general, even though such a strike could have had implications for U.S. forces in the region. The Washington Post reported Austin complained to Gallant in a call on April 3rd about the lack of sufficient notice from the Israeli side. Yeah, like they care about you. But you've been giving them a blank check, enabling them, supporting them, right? With everything that they need to commit a genocide against innocent civilians. And you're saying, oh, they didn't notify us. How about you just lift your aid off them? They won't survive for a week. Without American support, Israel wouldn't survive. You can forget about that. That's why the US is far worse than Israel when it comes to this. And it's very absurd, all of this talk about them siding with Israel to supposedly defend themselves. They're not on any mission to defend anything. Their only mission is to attack and cause havoc in the Middle East, to serve imperial powers. That's what they're there for, ever since their establishment. And it's becoming evident. And this was the main topic that I wanted to talk to you about. Now I'll open up the space up for all of you. If you have any questions that I'd be more than happy to address. And again, thank you so much for everyone joining us and participating. And okay, Abdul Qadir, that's the first question. Do you think the typical Israeli political left can coexist with Palestinians under one state governed by the Palestinians? You see, if you do have a one-state solution with everyone inside it, Israelis and Palestinians, like the one that we propose, that wouldn't necessarily be always governed by Palestinians. You could have potentially an Israeli origin leader, right? Which wouldn't be a problem if you have equality in that state. So you wouldn't want to go from one apartheid and one supremacy to another. That's the last thing that we want. The hope is that you'll have a one state between the river to the sea with full equality, full rights for everyone equally. No problem. Now, the typical political left in Israel, they're obviously more likely to, because many of them already have joint political parties with Arab Palestinians from in Israel. I've known many of them through the years, obviously. However, when such a solution will be made into reality, the people who will be there are the people who are willing to accept the idea that they're no longer superior, whether they're from the left or the right. Because don't get it mixed up, some people on what is called the Israeli left still believe in supremacy, at least when it comes to Israel, even if it's Israel within 1967 territories and the Palestinians are in the West Bank and Gaza. So the main thing is the implementation of equality, having solid laws and everyone is protected by the law. You have full, open, transparent democracy for everyone to participate, regardless of who they choose. I mean, to be fair, I had an argument, like, if there were to be an Israeli leader who would call for such a solution, imagine an Israeli leader coming, telling the Palestinians, okay, it's a little bit far-fetched, right? But let's say, and they say, okay, all of your historical rights are granted, refugees can come back, everything's okay. Yeah, some Palestinians probably vote for him, right? Because he gave them their historical rights. That's the thing here. But Zionism as an ideology never presented itself in a manner which can handle or include such a thought. of being equal to the indigenous people, the real owners of the land, because it was established as a neo-colonial, supremacist, violent, racist ideology. So some people would be able to, some people won't. The argument here is if you can, excellent. If you can't, the world is very big and you can go and live somewhere else. Uptown Bay Area, the good news is I don't even watch any mainstream news to know what they say. Lol. I'm not surprised whatsoever. Really. I mean, yeah, people lost faith in mainstream media. The only reason I personally would look at mainstream media really as part of my work, apart from that, if I was looking to get the real truth, the real knowledge, and I was listening, I'd listen to channels like myself and other people doing real independent work rather than go on mainstream media. But you have to listen to Netanyahu, you have to listen to Gantz, you have to listen to Gallant, you have to listen to Israeli mainstream media, way more propaganda than Western mainstream media. Even though that's questionable, really. Some Western mainstream media is really bad. It's shifting a little bit with some of them, but I still don't have any faith in any of them, really. But I'm not surprised. Recent, Brother Mahmoud, could you please tell the audience, what is the daily war expense of Israel overall? Because a small country of Israel must not survive for 6 months without any external support. Interesting. Now, they have official stats, okay? The official stats so far, they haven't even reached just over 100 billion, probably. And that number, I really suspected really heavily. Firstly, you had the lower grading they got, right, from Moody's. The bad part about that is that they had a negative projection as well. It's not that just the grading went down for the first time in Israel's history of this rating. The problem Israel had is the fact that they gave them a negative projection. So it's bad. We downgraded them, and it's not looking as if it's going to get any better. That's really bad because big companies, big corporations, multinational corporations, and Israel has many multinational corporations inside it, they rely on such ratings before they put their money in, because you're talking about a lot of money. And you have geopolitical risks, you have projections, the military situation, peace, even the potential of civil war. All of these things are taken into consideration. Natural disasters in some countries, obviously. This is how they calculate it. And that's just in terms of the external funding and investment inside of Israel, and there's lots of it. Then you go to the production in Israel. Now, all of these areas in south surrounding Gaza, they are very important for Israel's GDP. You have farms, you have factories, very strategic areas supplying 20 to 30% of Israel's needs, right? Then you go to the attacks of Yemen on the port of Eilat, usually a port that takes in a lot of equipment, a lot of stuff to Israel, new cars, what have you. And obviously other ports are attacked. But when it comes to the Red Sea, obviously it's completely done. Let alone the Suez Canal. That's why the Yemenis expanded their... so you're talking about a very big hit they took economically. they wouldn't really release all of the genuine figures. As a matter of fact, they're in denial. Like Benjamin Netanyahu, after Moody's degrading, he said that they've made a massive mistake, they made a miscalculation, we will emerge victorious from this war, and we will go back. And then you had Smotrich, who was the finance minister. He said that, oh, it's shameful, how can they do that? They didn't even call Hamas and Hezbollah terrorists. Typical arrogance, really, and they're in denial. However, it's affecting them massively, and they're trying to be very, very secretive about the level of damage that it's causing. Kirk Dougherty, Scott Ritter says that the US isn't prepared to fight a major war. Kirk, good to see you, and thank you for your membership. Yeah, he's been saying that from a long time ago, and I think he's right in his analysis, because you're not talking about the same world post World War II. Things have changed. China and Russia are way stronger. Even natural allies of the US in the region, although they haven't taken a position that's required when it comes to the genocide, they're slowly shifting away from Israel, from the US. And if you recall, I'm not sure if you remember the statements of the Republican candidate Ron Paul back in the 2008 campaign. Back then, even mainstream media was attacking him in the US and even ignoring him as if he doesn't exist. And the man had a very strong argument about the US getting the hell out of this position of the world police, and how it's harming US economy, US population, really. Well, you have all of this money being spent outside. Why don't you spend that money in America for Americans, right? But they are constantly on an offensive when it comes to glamorizing wars, glamorizing the military-industrial complex, trying to give this shiny image of the army that's only participated in genocides and military coups and violence across the world, from Latin America to Africa to the Middle East to Asia. But no, they're not at the same level that they were post-World War II. Things are changing, and it's clearly evident. I mean, they've been supporting this proxy war in Ukraine for 2 years now. What have you achieved? And now they had a strike on a major plant, apparently Russia, in Kiev. But they're still supporting them with billions from your money. That's the thing, from the people's pockets. Yet they don't have that money to invest it for essential things in their own countries. The healthcare system is messed. People dying of poverty, epidemics here and there. What is that? Shows you that these governments, they don't care about their own population, let alone populations of other countries. And Resent also elaborated on that same notion, really, at a time when American economy is going through recession. I don't understand why the people of America are paying tax just to fund Israel with all its financial might. Look, it's a similar situation here in the UK as well. You had Brexit, they sold us Brexit, and the people bought it. Despite the fact that people changed their opinion the next day, over 3 million signed the petition to revisit that notion, go backtrack on Brexit. Now there's even talks about joining the EU again because of the awful situation. Then you had COVID, and then they had this stupid policy when it comes to Russia. All of that paid by the people. They have to sell it to you that way. These people, these politicians and heads of state, they act as sales representatives for the industries that pay them. Either the donor, either the military-industrial complex. Main characteristics: excellent liar, persistent in your lies, shameless, and immoral. If you have these 4 qualities, go run for the president role or the prime minister. World Peace WW, tell us about the heavy missiles Iran sent to U.S. troops. How do you figure they were heavy and why was no one killed? Interesting. Well, they were ballistic missiles. So ballistic missiles, you're going to have talking warheads sometimes of 1 ton or more. I mean, Hezbollah is using half a ton warheads, the Burkan, on Israel, short range that cannot be intercepted by Iron Dome. They landed because nothing was intercepted, as it was reported back then by U.S. forces. The U.S. didn't admit. Obviously, does anyone believe the official death toll of U.S. soldiers in the Iraq war? 5,000 something. When the Iraqi resistance up until 2008, they recorded 32,000 casualties. So they could have been very shady about it. There is an option that they actually weren't killed because they have bunkers beneath them. It didn't. Whatever. Apparently, Trump at the time said some of the soldiers suffered from a really bad headache, according to him. There were reports a couple of years later saying that many of them suffered severe injuries because of the attack. Obviously, if you have a ballistic missile landing next to you, it's not something easy. But yeah, they wouldn't really reveal if there were any casualties, but it was reported that they were ballistic missiles and they were not intercepted at the time. That was the retaliation for the assassination of Qasim Soleimani. Interesting. Mahdi Bisbis. Salam Mahmoud, do you think that if there is a complete ceasefire in Gaza and Israel goes to attack, Hezbollah, the Palestinian resistance, will attack Israel again to support Hezbollah? That's a very interesting question. I think they would have to. Because, Hezbollah did them a favor, albeit very limited. They're going to have to return them a favor, albeit very limited. Now, it wasn't uncommon in previous wars. For example, when Israel started the 2006 war in Lebanon, that was very likely coordinated between Hezbollah and Hamas because both of them kidnapped Israeli soldiers in very similar times. So there was more reason for Israel to attack Gaza regardless because they kidnapped Gilad Shalit at the same time that Hezbollah kidnapped Ehud Goldwasser and Eldad Regev. They would potentially attack, but in also a limited manner, similar to how Hezbollah was, but that would also depend on the agreement that they come up with. Not to say that everyone is going to be bound by this agreement, not like Israel didn't breach agreements. They're very known for that. But I think they will most likely have some sort of action. And that's assuming that this barbarism is ending anytime soon, right? It doesn't look like we're going. I mean, even with this withdrawal that they had, they continue to 63 people in one day, in 24 hours on Eid Day. So I think they will attack, but in a limited manner, most likely. That's if this ends. Deep 007, why is Iran taking so long? Well, they haven't said that we will attack by this day. They said it's coming. Obviously, that would depend on their assessment of the situation, their likelihood, their preparation, where they see fit, what they see fit. But it's most likely gonna happen. Where, when, by who, and how? That's the question, really. But Israel is preparing. The population in Israel now is preparing for an all-out war with Iran. You have the Secretary of Defense of the US reassuring Israelis will be with you, will be this, will be that. Abd al-Haq, Iran is coming across very weak over their hesitations and over calculations. Look, it might appear like that to some, obviously, but yeah, like I said, they would have many calculations because we stated previously, when a country decides to take direct action, this is what I'm saying here, and that's assuming they will. I don't think they will. I personally don't think Iran will carry out an attack from Iran on Israel. I don't think so, as a retaliation for that. Just to avoid consequences and repercussions militarily and diplomatically from an international perspective. That's why they play it smart. They support other groups that are not even a state representative, right? Not an official state in other countries. Like from Iraq, we'll see the Iraqi resistance, not the Iraqi states. From Lebanon, we'll see Hezbollah, not the Lebanese state. And from Yemen, you'll see the Ansarullah rather than the official Yemeni state, although they obviously are split between their government and the other government that's internationally recognized. And that's done by Iran in a deliberate manner. Shazad Ahmed, thank you so much for your kind comment. And everyone else. Uptown Bay Area, son of Hamas in the US, appeared on Dr. Phil's show and said there are no civilians on Gaza. After October 7th, he said all civilians are guilty. It's funny, someone asked me about this sellout traitor the other day. And I said, ask him just one question, really. Did this man, or does he, think that Israel committed anything wrong? With all of what they've done, ask him if Israel did anything wrong. Did they kill an innocent civilian? And there he goes, and he'll tell you there are no civilians. Everyone's guilty. How about we take the same argument and implement it on another country? It's funny how these people even are allowed to speak. That's a genocidal ideology. How can these people speak like that? Meat telling you that country, there was an attack from there, everyone is guilty, kill all of them. What kind of and it's accepted, by the way. And it has been accepted for 75 years, by the way. It didn't just start to get accepted now. They've been accepting this notion because they've been supporting a supremacist apartheid entity. That's why they bring people like that. FP, would a one-state be allowed for the Palestinians to exist in Israel without being targeted in every aspect of their lives and continue with their killing and torturing? Who will monitor the Israelis? You see, if you do reach that stage, you would have already established the protection and the laws and the manifesto and everything that would protect it, really. So you would need to have everything in place to protect everyone from any such activities. And obviously that process isn't a one-day process, right? You're talking about years and years. And that's not to say that even if it is implemented, that everything's going to be happy clappy the next day. No, it won't be happy clappy the next day, but it will be a step towards the right direction, step in the right direction. And that's what's important. Taking gradual steps to the right direction, not expecting everything to swiftly and magically change overnight, but that is very possible. And one of the biggest obstacles, by the way, is the Western countries' support and enablement of Israel and their supremacist regime. That's one of the main problems, by the way. So you have all of these Western countries calling themselves democratic, worried about human rights, values, freedom of whatever it is, all lies. Why? Because you have a moral compass. It's called Palestine, and they constantly fail when it comes to it. And that wasn't just from today. Sabia, thank you so much for your super. Let's go to your next question. Yusuf Ali Mahmoud, please do a podcast with Netanyahu and give him a piece of your mind. Yeah, do you think I should contact him? Maybe we can both speak. Mahmoud, I've been very unhappy with you for the past 6 months. You've been saying wrong things about Israel. This is the first thing that Netanyahu will tell me. Egbertina, thank you so much. Kate, will Saudis, Egyptian, Jordanian people, not government join this fight? Look, there's protests. Not many in Saudi Arabia, by the way. In Egypt and Jordan, yes. In Jordan, they're getting more intense. In Saudi Arabia, at least not to my knowledge, I haven't seen many things in Saudi Arabia. But again, the ability of people to go out and do something when you have a state that is against it, or if things would be deemed as illegal, then you obviously have many problems. I think if they make it uncomfortable enough in their states and try and force them to change their policies, then something might happen, right? But not very dramatic, by the way. Suwatro Salam Brother Mahmoud, is aid delivered to the northern Gaza or being blocked by the IOF? Well, they said after Joe Biden spoke with Benjamin Netanyahu that they are opening the Erez checkpoint that they've been closing since the 7th of October under the excuse that Hamas destroyed it, which is stupid because they can open in an instance. They said we're going to open that checkpoint, and the next day, by the way, after they withdrew Division 98, they said that we're engaging in talks with aid groups in North Gaza to allow aid into Gaza. However, 3 days down the line, nothing. So if you're talking about them saying things and then going back, it's like typical Israel, right? All of a sudden he backtracks. And what did he say, Benjamin Netanyahu, by the way? He said that I can't do it because my cabinet members, Ben Gvir and Smotrich, they're not going to be happy with that. Although he promised it to Joe Biden, he promised it to world leaders, and he promised it to the war cabinet. But he is, again, worried about himself. He's not worried about anything else. Typical Benjamin Netanyahu. Yeah, Kate is also saying Israeli settlers blocked Gaza aid. Why can't they? Turkey, Jordan, Egypt block people do the same? Stop oil food entering Israel. Doesn't this show Arab weakness? It does show weakness from Arab states. But obviously, some of the population in these Arab states are protesting against it, primarily in Jordan. And, you know, the government is seeing what's happening. There's a police state. It's not like you live in a massive democracy when it comes to Jordan. Okay, they have a government, some voting and stuff, but even when it comes to certain protests, they will only be in very limited locations for a very specific period of time. They won't be there for a very long time. So it's obviously possible, but you're going to have a constant action and many people to make it reach that level. Then that's not to sound pessimistic or whatever, but just being realistic, really, in terms of the people's capacity. They can change, obviously, and people are protesting and showing their dissatisfaction, to say the least, with what their government is doing. Though some of them are saying, worse things, but that's unfortunately the situation. Muslim poet, I don't think we should use the term settler trespasser is more accurate. Yeah, probably. And I saw one question, and let me know. That would be the last one. Let me know if you have any more questions below. About regional war. That's from Born of Silence. Mahmoud, do you know Alistair Crook? He said a big regional war is inevitable, but I'm scared about what might come to Iran from Pakistan. If we get to war, sectarianism may become a bad problem. Look, it's not that it's inevitable. I think many sides tried to, work their way around having a regional war. Because if you want a regional war, it could be sparked immediately, but there would be massive implications regionally and globally if there were to be a regional war. But what many people are not saying really is how destabilizing Israel is to the whole region. I mean, who's committing a genocide? Who's attacking other sovereign nations, right? Israel. Yet, do you know what I mean? They get away with it. So it's very, very likely, it's very possible. And from the other part, when it comes to Iran and Pakistan, and sectarianism may become a bad problem. Look, sectarianism is, a very negative thing when it comes to the populations themselves, right? If anyone has any sectarian approach. And it's a tool that's been used by, those in power for a very long time. Internally for control purposes, to control their population through division and hatred of the other, and the creation of a sense of, I'm here to protect you, I'm protecting you, fear them, all of them, belongers of that sect or this religion or that religion are bad, and we're here to protect you, so come support me, give me money. From an empire perspective, from a superpower perspective, they've used it to engage their enemies in internal battles and wars to serve their own interests because they would do the job for them. It's a very ancient military strategy from the days of Sun Tzu, right? Who wrote the book The Art of War, if you haven't read it. You know, people learn these things. So I think Pakistan and Iran, as countries, despite their flaws as governments, obviously, and internally, they do have problems, both of the governments of Iran and Pakistan. I think they're probably aware of that, especially when it comes to the sectarian thing, and none of them will benefit from it, right? Because in some Arab Gulf states, they'll go even beyond the talk about sectarianism. For example, when it comes to Iran, they'll tell you the Persians, right? Like this notion that we had here in Britain before Brexit, you know, the Polish people are stealing our jobs, or people coming from East Europe stealing our jobs. They want to blame a nation for their own flaws, right? So it's very common, but I think that even on a government level, both of them are pretty much aware to that, because it would be a tremendous failure if something ends up towards that direction, because that would only serve Israel and the US interests, really. And with the recent escalation that they had, by the way, between Iran and Pakistan, because remember, about 2 months ago, they had a couple of attacks on each other's borders. It was de-escalated quite quickly, and they met and they said it's over and it's done. And then you obviously have these, all of a sudden ISIS is active. ISIS attacks in Iran, ISIS in Russia, ISIS in every place that the US doesn't like. Omsi is asking if open war breaks regionally, which side will Egypt join? Egypt will be on Egypt's side. So unless things like go like really, really big and you have to choose a side, look, they've been in a very good relationship with the US for a very long time. To the US, Egypt is considered to be a very stabling factor in the region. They try and de-escalate as much as possible. They talk diplomacy most of the time. However, they do actions without talking too much when it comes to the military, for example, with all of the preparations in Sinai. Like, they breached every line of their peace treaty with Israel when it comes to Sinai. When it comes to the level of forces, the level of equipment, the heavy equipment, the borders with Gaza, all of these things. Obviously, the position with Gaza and with the Rafah border and with their trio agreement between Israel and the Palestinian Authority, and not opening the borders for all aid to go in, not for Palestinians to flee en masse, because that was an Israeli plan. That's a different story. But we're talking about a military perspective, because it's a military state. They know what they're doing. So they won't be on the side of Israel, right? But they know Israel is their historical enemy. They occupied their lands. They occupied Sinai, and they didn't leave Sinai up until Egypt waged a war against them and took it by force. Simple. Then they had the peace treaty that said it needs to be a demilitarized zone. But again, now Egypt is breaking everything. Omar Zaqqut, I feel like Egypt most likely enter the war only if their new capital city were to be attacked, as it is now being constructed for an outrageous amount of money. Yes, they're spending a lot of money on infrastructure, on projects. They have what they call the mini Suez Canal. which is not to replace Suez, but to make a certain region, a depression, more alive, really. And, this all started also before they joined the BRICS. They joined the BRICS on January. So they take lots of things into consideration, and they also know their weak points too. So let's say Israel has nuclear weapons, which is very likely. They threatened or played with the nuclear card when it comes to Gaza. It would be easier for Israel to nuke Cairo, relatively far from them, right? So Egypt has a lot of calculations when it comes to this. That's why it wouldn't be like a very quick attack or entrance unless things, get really, really big. Richard Zogheb, what is to keep the US and Israel from falsely claiming Iran attacked them from Iran directly? They can make that claim. And they can make it really loud. That's very interesting. They can do like a false flag. They did 9/11, right? So they can create something, blame it on someone, and attack them. The question is, do they want to go that far? Do they want to go that far with Iran? Chances are not really, because if they were to go with Iran, Russia's entering. Iran helped Russia massively with their drones and everything. China, they're not going to be very quiet. China just brokered the deal last year with, just over a year ago, between Saudi Arabia and Iran. So they're playing a bigger role in that region. Them sending warships to the Red Sea in the beginning of this war was also sending a signal to the countries around that if the US police force isn't here, I'm here, just in case some countries are indeed worried, because the US sells its position in the Middle East and all of its bases and aircraft carriers as if it's there to protect the trade routes and what have you. And some Arab countries basically buy US protection. So I don't think they're really interested in attacking Iran. But, they could potentially do that. It's definitely a scenario. MPC, how can we interpret Hamas not sending rockets anymore? Could it be their resistance strategy or lack of equipment? A couple of things. Number one, they're engaged in a defensive war. That's number one. So they're using most of their resources, and their preference now is to defend themselves. Don't forget, they've prepared for this for years. That's why that's why Israel can't beat them. That's why they're defeating the Israeli army, because of their defense strategy. Secondly, they haven't stopped launching rockets. They still launch rockets, them and the other Palestinian resistance movements, but not at the same pace, because there's no need to. We're exhausting the army. That's their argument. And they obviously don't want to expose too much of the missile launchers and what have you, but they do launch missiles when they want to send a message. Like, Israel will go and speak with the residents of the areas surrounding Gaza, telling them, you need to go back to your home. We can't keep paying you for the hotels. There's 150,000 people evacuated from the areas surrounding Gaza, plus 80,000 at least from the areas surrounding the Lebanese borders, next to the Lebanese borders. All of them are in hotels. Who's paying for them? The state. Why? Because they told them to evacuate. And they even have problems with the residents of certain areas within like a mile or two off that specific line that Israel designated to support, who constantly complain to Israel, look, we're just a mile away from that region and you're not paying us, and we're having to pay off our own pocket. Some of them paid for lots of money to purchase new houses in central Israel. Not that that's going to be safe forever, right? Not that it's safe now from missiles. So they're using it very strategically whenever they need to. I think they're more focused on the defense war and protecting themselves as much as possible. It's not that they are not capable to do that. And don't forget, they produce all of these weapons, and they have the capacity to produce even more, but they're using them based on their own interest at this specific time. Deep Divers, the campaign, no tax for genocide, a valid thing in the UK. I believe it is legal. I'm wondering if my question is problematic. Anyone in the UK can check it out. Well, I haven't really looked into it too much, to be fair. I probably should. What I did hear is a couple of people from the legal profession that they're behind similar campaigns, because the argument here is that the tax money shouldn't be used to support a genocidal entity. Now, the argument here with taxation is as follows. If you go to the tax office, you will see where all of the tax goes to: education, engineering, infrastructure, healthcare, military war. Lots of it goes to that, obviously. The question is, how much of the tax, obviously, and I, again, don't take it as if, because I haven't looked into it enough, but I'm just giving you my opinion. But let's say if you don't want to pay tax on certain things, for example, what you would need to consider here is that not all of the tax goes there. So, for example, in the UK's case, the official reported figures from the UK is that they exported approximately 800 million of arms to Israel since 2008. Big number, nowhere near what the US supports, 3 billion a year, apart from what Israel purchases. That's just the aid. That's not Israeli purchases from the US outside of that scope, and there is a lot going on there. So it's interesting. I obviously need to look into it further, but it wouldn't be I don't think, in my opinion, it's going to be a very clear-cut thing, because like I said, and obviously whether you agree or disagree with the taxation on its in general, really, because I personally think many of the taxation laws are really against the people in most cases, and I think some of the laws are obnoxious. But when it comes to that specifically, the thing to bear in mind is the part of the taxation that goes there. Because if the counter argument would be 800 million in comparison to, I don't know, 800 billion, so you're talking about what, 0.1% of tax? That's not going to change much of your tax bill. For example, if you're claiming that you're not paying tax for the genocide in Israel, that's just, I'm giving you that from off the top of my head, really. But again, that needs to be looked into properly. But I do know many people in the legal field who are very vocal against this. That's why I had 600 people advising the government they're supporting a crime against humanity with Israel. They shouldn't support them. Precious Guinea Pigs, thank you so much for your super thanks. I really appreciate that. Clara saying, did you know Palestine has the most international law graduates per capita in the world? Interesting. I personally didn't know that, but that's a very interesting statistic. Look, Palestinian people, if you talk about the Gaza and the West Bank particularly, You know, the only thing they want is to be just left alone. You know, they're very self-sufficient. There are lots of production, productivity, trade, all of these things, even across the world, really. But you have this apartheid affecting every aspect of their life. Okay, anything else, guys, before we wrap up? No, it looks like that's it. Okay, we'll wrap it up there. Guys, thank you so much for being with me. It was nice being with you again, as usual. I'm hopefully here every single day. And that's apart from the regular short videos. I'm trying to do them short with multiple things, really. Khalid Razzaq, thank you so much for your super as well. And tomorrow I will hopefully be here again. Again, a couple of you said that they are not getting the notifications, and they are not, some of them are being unsubscribed. So always check your subscription status, resubscribe if you have been unsubscribed, and again, report it if you have a problem. In terms of the notifications, obviously make sure you have the notifications on. If they're on, you still face it, again, report it, right? YouTube says they have lots of glitches. But hey, if you want to definitely be sure about anything that I'm posting, go to my channel directly and check the channel video tab, and then the live tab as well. And Omar Zaqut, thank you so much, and everyone, and Molly, and everyone, and our moderators. And I will see you soon in the next video. Take care. Enjoy your weekend, night, day, depending on where you are, and the rest of your weekend. Take care.